In the dim archives of Virginia Beach, buried beneath decades of dust and deliberate obscurity, lies a forbidden transcript from 1931, a stenographer's hurried notes from Edgar Cayce's trance state, suppressed by those who feared its implications for the soul's hidden voyages. What if I told you this lost reading unveils how your consciousness detaches nightly, slipping into realms that challenge the very boundaries of death? This is the suppressed revelation of America's sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce, whose visions pierce the veil of reality. Edgar Cayce, born in 1877 near Hopkinsville, Kentucky, was no ordinary man. A humble photographer by day, in the early 1900s, he stumbled into his gifts during a health crisis, entering self-induced trances that tapped into what he termed the universal mind. From 1901 onward, in sessions spanning 4 decades, Cayce delivered over 14,000 documented readings at his Association for Research and Enlightenment, ARE, headquarters in Virginia Beach. Yet certain transcripts, like those from the 1930s, were quietly sidelined, overlooked amid wartime paranoia and skepticism from medical establishments wary of his psychic diagnostics. Why? Because they exposed a consciousness unbound by flesh, a nightly exodus that blurred life and afterlife, threatening conventional views of mortality. His loyal stenographer Gladys Davis captured these words verbatim, but even she hesitated to publicize the most audacious claims, fearing ridicule or worse, censorship from powers that guarded scientific truths. At the heart of these hidden files pulses Cayce's core revelation. During sleep, the soul does not slumber, it departs. In a trance-recorded session from 1931, Reading 5754-1, Cayce described the mechanism with chilling precision. A luminous __quote_1 _ tethers the soul to the body, allowing it to roam ethereal planes while the physical form rests. This isn't metaphor or hallucination. It's drawn from his observed visions of countless souls in transit. Quote 2, he intimated in the transcript. Quote 3, imagine the existential dread. Every night you are adrift, vulnerable to encounters that could rewrite your destiny. Cayce's insights, verified across thousands of cases, position sleep not as escape but as a gateway to suppressed knowledge, realms where death's sting dissolves into continuity. This nocturnal odyssey unfolds across 3 veiled dimensions, each escalating the soul's confrontation with its eternal nature. The first, the borderland, emerges as a shadowy threshold in Cayce's accounts, a liminal haze populated by earth-tethered spirits and the newly departed, where the psyche grapples with loss and lingering ties. Vivid encounters here aren't figments. They're intersections of consciousness, pulling the sleeper into dialogues that echo beyond waking. Consider a Virginia businessman, chronicled in Reading 2067-1 from the 1920s, who sought Cayce's counsel after financial ruin. That night, in what felt like a half-remembered vigil, his soul wandered this borderland and met his late father's essence. The apparition imparted precise strategies, not vague platitudes, but actionable insights on investments and partnerships. Heeding them, the man not only salvaged his fortune, but forged a lasting legacy. Cayce's follow-up trance affirmed it, a genuine communion, soul to soul, proving the dead persist as guides, accessible in sleep's quiet hours. This revelation stirs profound unease. What unresolved conversations from your life might await in that misty frontier? As the soul delves deeper, propelled by spiritual attunement, it crosses into the second dimension, the Akashic Records, that vast, forbidden repository Cayce envisioned as the cosmos's immutable ledger. Here, in Reading 5754-2, he portrayed it as an infinite hall of vibrating archives, chronicling every soul's incarnations, intentions, and echoes across time. Sleep becomes a pilgrimage to this inner sanctum, where the mind retrieves buried truths, past life echoes, karmic blueprints, even probabilistic futures, fueling evolution amid the illusion of separation. The psychological intrigue intensifies. To access this is to confront the self's multiplicity, shattering the ego's isolation. A stark example survives in the Overlooked Files from 1944, rating 3124-1. A desperate mother, Martha Robertson, consulted Cayce for her son's terminal blood ailment, a scourge baffling physicians. In her ensuing slumber, her consciousness was drawn to this luminous archive, escorted by an ethereal custodian to a glowing tome. It unfolded remedies, a precise blend of herbs, roots, and infusions etched with crystalline detail. Awakening with the formula intact, she administered it, and her boy recovered miraculously within weeks. Cayce's reading corroborated the journey, not delusion, but a sanctioned retrieval from the records, underscoring sleep's role as healer and oracle. Yet, this access demands purity. Tainted motives bar entry, heightening the tension of our fragmented awareness. For the rare, advanced soul, those attuned through discipline and grace, Cayce's visions culminated in the third dimension, the Hall of Records, a transcendent nexus beyond time, where collective human potential converges with divine source. In suppressed notes from the 1940s, he hinted at prophecies born here, like the chilling forewarning of World War II's carnage, received in a trance-sleep hybrid that left even Gladys Davis shaken. This realm isn't mere knowledge, it's transformative union, where consciousness merges with universal will, dissolving individual fear of oblivion. Cayce warned of its perils, the ego's recoil from such vastness, the risk of madness for the unprepared, evoking a psychological abyss where personal identity frays against infinity. Expanding on these layers, Cayce's philosophy reframes death not as endpoint, but as amplified sleep, a seamless transition where the silver cord extends indefinitely, consciousness persisting in fluid exploration. His readings probe the psyche's architecture dreams as fragmented reports from these travels, their hyper-real intensity signaling authentic crossings. This invites introspection. Why do some nights leave us hollowed, as if we've brushed the infinite? The intrigue lies in the suppression. Institutions dismiss Cayce's work as pseudoscience, burying transcripts that could upend materialist paradigms, forcing us to question if our waking reality is the true dream. Speculatively, one unvoiced echo from Cayce's era aligns with his visions. After physical death, consciousness might fragment into parallel echoes, like light through a prism, allowing the soul to relive pivotal Earth moments from alternate perspectives, reviewing not just actions but their ripples across interconnected lives, fostering deeper empathy in subsequent journeys. In the end, as Cayce's hidden archives whisper, what if death is merely awakening to the dreams we've always inhabited? The choice to listen or forget remains yours, but the nights ahead may hold the answers you've long evaded. In the shadowed vaults of the Association for Research and Enlightenment, buried among thousands of stenographic transcripts from the 1930s and 40s, lies a forbidden recording, one that Edgar Cayce's devoted stenographer Gladys Davis hesitated to file away. This suppressed session, dated October 1935, whispers of a realm beyond the veil of sleep, a third dimension of pure spirit where souls touch the divine and glimpse futures yet unborn. What Cayce revealed that night could upend everything we believe about consciousness. And why was it sealed from public eyes? For decades. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and later Virginia Beach, entered trance states over 14,000 times between 1901 and his death in 1945. Known as the man who saw tomorrow, he diagnosed illnesses, foretold earthquakes, and mapped the lost continents of Atlantis from a self-induced sleep. Yet much of his work on the soul's nocturnal voyages was overlooked or deliberately hushed by skeptics in medical and religious circles who feared its implications for the afterlife and human divinity. These weren't mere dreams. They were dispatches from hidden planes, documented meticulously by Gladys Davis as Cayce's voice droned in hypnotic rhythm. Unearthed only recently from dusty archives, this material challenges the boundaries of reality itself. At the heart of Cayce's revelations pulses this uppermost dimension, a luminous expanse of unadulterated spirit, where individual souls dissolve into communion with the universal consciousness. What he termed the creative forces, echoing the divine mind. Here, prophecies unfold like blueprints of fate, and missions for earthly lives are etched in eternal light. Cayce didn't theorize from afar. He journeyed there himself. In one electrifying trance, captured in reading 294-131, his soul ascended on the night of October 19th, 1935. What he beheld was no vague intuition, but a vivid panorama of cataclysm. Europe's cities crumbling under siege, a charismatic leader with a shadowed mustache rallying masses, and America inexorably pulled into a global maelstrom. This was 4 years before the first shots of World War II echoed across the Atlantic. Yet every shadow he described aligned with the horrors that followed, from blitzkriegs to atomic shadows to atomic. As the session's echoes faded in that modest Virginia Beach room, Cayce awoke, his face etched with the weight of foreknowledge, murmuring to Gladys, underscore, underscore, quote underscore four, underscore, underscore. This ethereal plane, Cayce insisted, isn't an elite sanctuary for mystics alone. It's the birthright of every wandering soul, accessible through the gateway of sleep. But entry demands attunement, a deliberate alignment of the spirit, free from the chains of fear or earthly clamor. In reading 5754, he outlined the psychic architecture of these realms, lower astral layers teeming with unresolved echoes of the material world, mid-levels for subconscious processing, and this pinnacle where pure insight reigns. Imagine your nightly drift not as random reverie, but as a deliberate pilgrimage orchestrated by your higher self. What if those fleeting images, the ones that jolt you awake with unexplained urgency, are fragments of prophetic counsel? Smuggled back from divine counsel? Transitioning from prophecy to personal transformation, consider the testimony preserved in reading 3395-1, a case that blurred the lines between patient and pilgrim. In 1943, amid the war's relentless toll, a nurse from Virginia Beach, exhausted by tending shattered soldiers, sought Cayce's guidance, her spirit frayed like the bandages she wrapped daily. Following his prescribed rituals of meditative focus and intentional invocation before sleep, she crossed into that healing sanctum of the third dimension. There, in a temple aglow with ethereal light, radiant beings mended war-torn souls, revealing her nursing as an earthly echo of celestial mercy. Upon waking, she returned to her duties, infused with an otherworldly calm. Veterans spoke of her touch as a balm that soothed not just flesh, but the invisible wounds of the psyche. Cayce later confirmed in trance, her soul had indeed communed in those restorative halls, proving the dimension's power to recharge the weary seeker. Yet Cayce's insights spiral deeper into the psychological labyrinth of the self. These soul flights, he revealed in reading 136-18, are no haphazard wanderings, but purposeful returns to a pre-birth blueprint, a sacred map each soul drafts before descending into flesh. Night after night, we revisit this design under the tutelage of unseen mentors, drawing sustenance for our incarnate quests. Cluttered minds, laden with resentment or distraction, bar the ascent, stranding the traveler in dimmer echoes. But with conscious preparation, meditation on ideals of service, prayers for elevation, even __quote_5, __, where queries are posed to the infinite, barriers dissolve. Followers at the Edgar Cayce Foundation still employ these methods today, harvesting visions that redirect lives toward purpose. Picture the existential ripple. If sleep is your soul's covert academy, what untapped wisdom lies dormant in your subconscious, waiting to redefine your path? And herein lies a speculative veil Cayce never fully lifted, yet one his visions imply. Consciousness after death may not shatter into oblivion, but seamlessly merge with this third dimension, shedding the temporary shroud of sleep to embrace perpetual, unfiltered union with the creative forces, eternal awareness without the illusion of separation. As the final notes of Cayce's last reading fade into history's hush, delivered in that same Virginia Beach sanctuary before his passing in 1945, one chilling caveat lingers from reading 294 to 136, a guardian's whisper amid the revelations. Not every entity in these vast expanses bears goodwill. Shadowy influences lurk, preying on doubt and discord, much like deceivers in our waking world. So as you surrender to slumber tonight, attune wisely. What hidden doors might your soul unlock, and at what unseen cost? In the shadowed vaults of the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, a forgotten cassette from the 1940s gathers dust, whispers of Edgar Cayce's trance state revelations, sealed away by those who feared their power to unravel the veil between waking life and the unseen realms. What if the sleeping mind, as Cayce uncovered, is a gateway to forbidden dimensions where souls wander unchecked, brushing against truths that could shatter our grip on reality? Edgar Cayce, the Kentucky-born psychic known as the Sleeping Prophet, emerged in the early 1900s from humble beginnings in Hopkinsville, his gifts awakening around 1901 during a desperate health crisis. For over 4 decades until his death in 1945, he delivered more than 14,000 readings in a self-induced hypnotic state, dictating insights on healing, prophecy, and the soul's hidden voyages, often transcribed by his loyal stenographer, Gladys Davis. Yet amid the thousands of public transcripts, certain files were quietly archived, overlooked, or suppressed by skeptics, and even some followers who deemed them too esoteric, too disruptive to conventional views of consciousness and mortality. These overlooked gems, unearthed from Cayce's Virginia Beach headquarters, reveal his deepest warnings about the night's uncharted territories, where the soul detaches from the body in astral flight, vulnerable to forces beyond our ken. At the heart of these concealed readings lies Cayce's urgent core revelation. The soul's nocturnal wanderings are not mere dreams, but deliberate excursions into astral planes, fraught with peril without vigilant safeguards. In one such suppressed session from 1938, detailed in reading 2072-10, A young seeker, untrained in protection, ventured into lower astral layers teeming with earthbound entities, restless spirits clinging to earthly ties. Trapped in this shadowy realm, he returned night after night, his vitality siphoned by parasitic presences that fed on his fear, manifesting as relentless nightmares and a draining fatigue that echoed into his waking hours. Cayce, entering his trance, diagnosed the entanglement. The man's soul had snared itself in a web of confused energies, pulling him toward spiritual erosion. Through precise invocations, encircling the self in the radiant white light of universal Christ consciousness, and calling upon guardian angels for shielding, Cayce guided his release, severing the bonds and restoring equilibrium. This forbidden transcript underscores a truth Cayce hammered home. Soul travel demands armor, lest the wanderer invite chaos from the unseen. Fade to the intimate glow of a bedside lamp in 1940s, Virginia Beach, where Cayce's voice, captured in stenographic shorthand, bridges the physical and ethereal. He expanded this into profound psychological territory, probing how these soul journeys entwine with the body's frailties and the mind's hidden fractures. In reading 294-1, Cayce unveiled that ailments often stem from astral skirmishes, negative encounters imprinting the soul with discordant vibrations that crystallize as pain, disease, or unrest upon re-entry. A soul grazed by traumatic visions or malevolent forms might awaken the flesh with chronic tension or unexplained sorrow, a psychic residue demanding exorcism through ritual cleansings alongside herbal cures. Yet in reversal, Cayce chronicled redemptions from higher realms, souls ascending to luminous domains during sleep, bathed in healing essences that cascade back, mending the mortal coil. Consider the case of Martha Robertson, preserved in the hushed reading 3124-2, a testament to this duality. Bedbound by a crippling spinal decay that twisted her days into agony, Martha turned to Cayce's preparatory rites, silent affirmations before slumber, inviting divine oversight. In her dreams, she traversed to a celestial sanctuary where ethereal healers wielded streams of pure light to realign her form. Over 3 weeks, these visions wrought change. Her spine, once a ruin on radiographs, began to knit anew, defying medical prognosis. By 6 months' end, she walked freely, her vitality enduring for decades. Such accounts, buried in Cayce's vaulted archives, evoke an existential shiver. What if our nightly drifts are not escapes but battlegrounds, where the soul's fate foreshadows the body's decline, blurring death's edge into a continuum of conscious flux? This tension deepens when Cayce turns his gaze to the soul's odyssey across incarnations, a philosophical labyrinth where sleep becomes a forge for eternal growth. In the overlooked reading 5753-5, he described advanced souls leveraging deep repose for karmic reconciliation, revisiting bygone eras to confront lingering shadows, absolve ancient foes, and seal unfinished soul contracts. These voyages accelerate evolution, dissolving patterns etched over lifetimes, transforming sleep into a deliberate rite of transcendence. A poignant illustration emerges from 1940 in reading 239-1. A woman haunted by an irrational dread of water, her baths triggering waves of terror despite no earthly cause. Cayce's trance pierced the veil. Her essence carried the scar of a prior drowning, as a mother perishing in a deluge while shielding her young. Guided through sleep meditations, her soul revisited that torrent, rewriting the narrative in spiritual simulation, rescuing her charges, releasing the chokehold of loss. Awakening, the phobia evaporated. She took to the waves with ease, a freedom once inconceivable. Here, Cayce's insights stir psychological intrigue. If sleep heals temporal wounds, does it mock death's finality, rendering the soul an eternal navigator through veils of illusion? And yet, in the quiet margins of these suppressed dialogues, Cayce hinted at horizons beyond even his documented visions, a speculative whisper on consciousness post-mortem. Imagine the liberated soul, unmoored from flesh, drifting into sleep-like states where earthly attachments dissolve, revealing a collective dreamscape of shared archetypes. A boundless archive of all souls' woven narratives where individuality blurs into universal awareness, echoing the astral previews of nightly repose. As the echoes of Cayce's trance fade from these hidden reels, one question lingers in the dim archive light. If your soul already quests the infinite each night, what undiscovered realms await when death finally loosens its mortal tether? Fade in, dimly lit archive room, flickering microfilm reels. A voiceover begins, urgent and hushed, as if reading from a forbidden transcript. Narrator, VO. In the shadowed vaults of Virginia Beach, buried among thousands of sealed envelopes from the 1940s, lies a forgotten cassette, allegedly smuggled out before the Association for Research and Enlightenment locked away Edgar Cayce's most controversial readings. These weren't just predictions of wars or cures. They were visions of the soul's midnight exodus, revelations so profound they risked unraveling the veil between life and death. Suppressed for decades, this lost recording from a 1930 session with patient Martha Robertson, transcribed by stenographer Gladys Davis in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, whispers a truth Cayce guarded closely. Your consciousness doesn't end at the grave, it merely shifts realms just as it does every night in sleep. Smooth transition, cut to sepia-toned photographs of Cayce in trance, eyes closed, hands limp on the table, ambient hum of ocean waves from Virginia Beach. Narrator VO. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, emerged in 1901 from a sun-scorched Kentucky town, his gift igniting during a hypnotic self-reading to cure his own laryngitis. By the 1920s and 30s in Virginia Beach, he had channeled over 14,000 documented sessions, visions pulled from what he called the quote, _6, an ethereal library of all human souls. But not all were archived for public eyes. Gladys Davis, his loyal stenographer, captured these in feverish shorthand. Yet select transcripts on astral wanderings in the afterlife were deemed too incendiary, tucked away amid fears of ridicule or worse, accusations of heresy from a world still clinging to materialist science. Overlooked in the chaos of Cayce's declining health in the 1940s, these hidden pages surfaced only recently, revealing why his insights on consciousness were buried. They challenged the finality of death itself. Transition, slow zoom on a yellowed transcript page, ink fading, words like soul flight and post-mortem veil blurring into ethereal mist. Narrator, VO. At the heart of the suppressed archive beats Cayce's core revelation, drawn from a trance state in 1932 with Martha Robertson, a seeker grappling with visions of her late husband's spirit. As Cayce's voice, flat, otherworldly, emerged, he described the soul not as a prisoner of flesh, but a navigator unbound. Quote 9, he intoned, through the ether. Quote 10, in those midnight voyages, the soul slips free, communing with guides, revisiting karmic echoes, and harvesting wisdom from higher planes. Yet Cayce warned, these journeys are raw, unfiltered glimpses of eternity, where the ego dissolves and truths flood in. Truths that could heal the living, but shatter illusions of separation. Martha, trembling as Gladys scribbled furiously, received guidance on her own soul's nocturnal paths, a blueprint for conscious recall that Cayce insisted was essential to transcend fear. Transition. Montage of dreamlike animations, silhouettes floating through starry voids, merging with ancestral figures, building a sense of psychological depth. Narrator, V.O. Delve deeper into Cayce's psyche, and the intrigue thickens with existential shadows. From his altered states, he unveiled death not as oblivion, but a symbolic gateway, a profound quote, _11 mirroring our nightly descents. Consciousness, he revealed in forbidden visions, persists as an indestructible thread, weaving through archetypes of the collective unconscious. Lost cities like Atlantis rising in trance-fueled reveries, forbidden knowledge of reincarnation suppressed by religious dogmas. The tension mounts in his philosophical musings. Why do we fear the soul's freedom when sleep proves it nightly? Cayce's readings probe the psyche's hidden chambers, where suppressed memories of past lives surface, urging us to confront the illusion of individuality. In one overlooked session, he reflected on the psychological rift. Humanity's dread of death stems from forgetting these inner worlds, leaving us adrift in a material cage, blind to the soul's eternal dialogue with the divine. Transition. Subtle shift to contemplative silence, then a faint echo of Cayce's voice, reciting a reconstructed insight, visuals of a soul ascending a luminous staircase. Narrator, V.O. Building on these visions, consider this speculative thread Cayce might have woven in his later, untranscribed reveries. After the body's final breath, consciousness doesn't fracture. It expands into a dreamless dream, where the soul reviews lifetimes not in judgment, but in compassionate synthesis, retaining fragments of earthly bonds as portals to reunion. This hidden truth, aligned with his Akashic glimpses, suggests death's aftermath as a conscious curation of essence free from time's chains, inviting the evolved spirit to co-create new incarnations. Transition. Fade to black and white footage simulation of Cayce awakening from trance, eyes opening wide, a mix of awe and burden. Narrator, V.O. Unido. As the echoes of this lost recording fade, one haunting query lingers from the archives. If your soul maps the unseen every night under Cayce's guidance, what forbidden horizons await when the dawn of death finally breaks?